Good evening, Scott.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Not too bad. How's your day?
I have had the laziest, uninspired day. uh, I think at least twice I said to the wife, I just can't seem to get motivated. I don't feel like doing anything. And she says, blame it on the weather. I'm like, I'll do that. It was kind of gray and yucky here today.
Same here. And cold.
Yeah, it's gotten chillier here. It's not too cold yet, but it's definitely, I think we were in the low 70s most of the day. And it's humidity in the air, so it's a little uncomfortable. But yeah, it's been nice overall. As far, I mean, overcast overall. Where are we at here? Nobody else doing this. We could chat for a minute or two. But I'm glad that Keith responded and got back to us. So I'm hoping maybe what he said will that we can help you make a decision on what direction to go.
Yeah, I don't see much luck with going with an administrative law judge. I just want to get the information out there, and I think that if I can get somebody to come in and do a news article about it, it helps to, show how much the VA is against moving forward, even at the risk of
Yep,
trying
that
to
could
get
definitely be an interesting aspect to it. I like that. Get the media involved.
it. So when I get
All
closer, I'll.
right. Okay, yeah, keep me posted as you get closer. Looking at the clock here, we're already at 7:03. It took me a little while to get started here tonight. I think some of you that are on the call know that I've got some computer issues from time to time. The thing just like to lock up on me. It's been so well behaved. I don't think it's locked up in over a week. And just as I hit the Zoom button to start getting things prepared for the meeting, it locked up and I had to do a full restart. And it takes a little while to restart anymore with the new operating system. But here we are and ready to go. So it is 7:04 I see on my clock, and this is the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation. My name is Scott Weldon. I am the Executive Director of the South Carolina Chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I'd like to start first by welcoming everybody to the call, everybody who's here on the Zoom with me, anybody who may be watching on YouTube, and also welcome to anybody who might be watching on YouTube as a recording later on. Of course, I don't have my document prepared to read our disclaimer, so give me a moment to quick go find it. I should have this memorized after all the years of saying it, but I do not. Docs. This conversation. And there we go. All righty. So all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. All right, got the disclaimer out of the way. Again, welcome to everybody who's here on the call with me. Welcome everybody else who's watching. As I did generally mention on the welcome, if you are watching on YouTube live, we do not monitor the comments there. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below off to the side wherever your device has your comment. And after YouTube is done rendering the video, we will come back usually in about 24 hours and try and address your questions, comments, and or concerns. All right, this is the second Wednesday of the month, and second Wednesday of the month has become the monthly meeting for the South Carolina chapter of NORML. Our agenda for this evening generally runs, we will talk a little bit about what's going on federally, what's going on locally or state level, and then we'll talk a little bit about local chapter business. As most of you know, not a whole lot is going on at federal level. We've got the 3 descheduling bills that we've been watching. We have the MORE Act, which is from the House. We have the what I call COA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act in the Senate. And we have the States' Rights Act in the House. The first two are democratically sponsored. The third one is a Republican-sponsored bill. And there is some actual news on two of those at the moment. Actually, come over to the room. I got to take this jacket off. While I'm here thinking about it, I'm going to click another link open, and I'm going to share with you first off a link to contact your legislators and support the MORE Act. Again, nothing has really been going on with that at the moment since last I heard, it was passed out of the Judiciary Committee back in September of last year. And has been doing not a whole lot since. So here's the link for the action alert from NORML. You have the opportunity to go and write a letter to your legislators and ask them to support the MORE Act. That's pretty much all I'm going to talk about the MORE Act today. That is one that is one of the deschedule from the Controlled Substances Act. The other one, see if I can find a link for it real quick. Cannabis Opportunity and Administration Act. I don't know where that link is now. Oh, there it is. I didn't see the title of it in this particular link. This is just recently on the, oops, Joey's here. On the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, it was announced, I think it was either sometime in February, I don't think it was March, but recently, Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader and a primary sponsor on this bill, it's a Booker Wyden Schumer sponsored bill, announced that they would be introducing it in April. We don't know if they're going to wait for 420. I don't know why. It would be silly to, but anyway, this was the bill that was first introduced as a legislative draft. I want to say last July, June, something like that. They had left it open for public comment for a couple of months and ended public comments back last September. I believe the 1st of September. It since has been in redraft, and I haven't heard a whole lot of it since the beginning of the year. Our political director at NORML has been changed, and although Justin used to keep me pretty well up to date on what was going on federal level, I have not really heard anything from the new federal policy director at National. Matter of fact, I just kind of sent a little annoyed email out earlier mentioning that. Again, this is a deschedule from the Controlled Substances Act and would make it federally legal. Again, as we all know, federal legalization will not really change any laws here in South Carolina. And so even if it goes full legalization at national, we still have our work cut out for us here. Although it will sort of, I think, grease the pathways a little bit. Again, there's not a whole lot I have to say, except for it's expected to be reintroduced or officially introduced in April. Considering we're almost halfway through March, might not have much more than about a month or so to wait. So I'm looking forward to that. Third, I got just real quickly, briefly mention, let me find the article I was following on this one here. My machine restart screwed me up. It's on the next page here. The MACE bill, as they call on NORML, the States' Rights Act. I'll share that link with you just here in a second. although I see no updates on this link. It was just announced within the past week, I believe, 6 days ago or so, that the House will have a hearing on this bill. Get back to my search and find the actual story. I'm sorry, folks, I'm just scattered tonight. Lost my link when everything shut down. Oh, I see what happened. I need to switch my search criteria just a little bit. There's the one. This is a Marijuana Moment article. I'll share the link with you here real quick. This came out March 4th, so just about 5 days ago, 6 days ago. That the GOP cannabis bill to get congressional hearings, sponsors say. Just kind of go down and look at the article real quick. Nancy Mace said Democrats have agreed to schedule a hearing on a marijuana legislation bill soon. The Congresswoman also said that Ethan Nadelman's psychoactive podcast on Ethan Nadelman's psychoactive podcast that her campaign has been polling on cannabis issues in her own district and finding strong support. I am in Nancy Mace's district, and I believe we do have strong support here in South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. And I'm excited to see that it's getting a hearing. As many of you know, it seems in our legislative system, whoever happens to be the controlling power of a particular legislative body, the House or the Senate, they also, in most cases, control the committees. And a lot of times they will then just completely ignore the non-controlling parties' proposals, as we see quite often here in South Carolina. We've talked about it a number of times. We've got at least 3 decriminalization bills and 1 descheduling bill here at state level, all democratically sponsored in a Republican-controlled environment. 3 of those, the decriminalize are all House bills. The deschedule bill is a Senate bill. I don't believe any of those bills will ever get a hearing in their committees, let alone make it to the legislative floor. This one, I actually heard this last week, kind of surprised me, but pleasantly surprised. So we'll just kind of have to see where that goes and find out when the hearing may come about. I don't really have any preference on any of these descheduling bills. There is a 4th descheduling bill sponsored by a Republican. I don't see if I can find it. No, it's buried in here somewhere. But anyway, it includes no reparative justice type language, which is one thing that I think is real important. If you're going to legalize it, you better get moving on expungement and fixing the records. And, as many of you know, one of the things that really sort of sparks my ire is the discrimination, the implemented and approved by government discrimination of cannabis consumers in our country. To the point where everybody says, "Hey, Stoner, get a job," but then they want you to pee in a cup, and then once you pee in the cup, they go, "Oh, you can't have a job because you get cannabis." Excuse me, but like I said, it's to me completely unconstitutional. It's a violation of your 4th Amendment to make you pee in a cup just to get a job. And as many of us know, if you read the studies, pre-employment drug testing does absolutely nothing to make the workplace safer, and does absolutely nothing to indicate that any employees that test positive for those substances will be poor work performers. So it's just completely arbitrary discrimination. All right, before I go rambling on too far about anything else, federal level, does anybody have any questions, comments, and or thoughts on these concerns on these descheduling bills? Keeping on comments here for a second. We could pass that along for you, Josh, if you like. I don't speak to her often, but I could contact her office. I'm sure a lot of her constituents feel that way, and she is pleasant to look at, I must say. Nancy Mays is not one of those I like to say, pretty on the outside. I don't know how pretty on the inside. You know, the old saying, beauty's only skin deep, but ugly's to the bone. And to me, that ugly is usually personality, bad attitude, blah, blah, blah. And to be quite honest with you, from what I've seen a lot of Nancy, she's a pleasant person. She's nice to talk to. I've never had any problem talking with her. So yeah, I think we all agree with you there for the most part. Anyway, I don't think that'll help her legislation in any way. As you know, once she first announced her proposal, the head of the GOP, his name's he was South Carolina, his name is slipping my mind, but he immediately came out and said, no, you know, the South Carolina GOP does not support. All right. The second thing I wanted to kind of mention tonight about federal level. Losing my search windows. That one. The other thing that was kind of big news this week was the federal budget, which there's the article I'm looking for. DC's recreational marijuana ambitions blocked by federal bill. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is it is a federal level legislation. And basically, Washington, D.C. is got its own fights to go on. They are trying to fight for statehood in D.C. because at this point, residents of Washington, D.C. have no representation, and their laws are basically controlled by Congress. And Washington, D.C. would be continued to be barred from launching a recreational marijuana project under the U.S. congressional budget released on Wednesday. Basically, they blocked any funding for Washington, D.C. to move forward with their recreational marijuana. It's a huge setback for the city that was poised to launch an adult use market. U.S. Rep. Andy Harris, a Maryland Republican, put in place the budget rider after District of Columbia voters legalized adult use in 2014. The U.S. Cannabis Council, which has become the marijuana industry's leading lobbying groups, issued a statement saying it was deeply disappointed. Now, this does mention that federal marijuana reform, such as cannabis banking, for example, continues to struggle to gain traction this year, and we're all still hoping for reform. That's basically what that article is about, though. That they're blocking funding through the budget bill. Again, doesn't affect South Carolina necessarily in any way, but it definitely is something to keep an eye on, federal legislatively. I think I really have anything else at federal level that I want to talk about. The Safe Banking Act we talked about last time pretty much. Oh, I do want to point this out just because I was watching a podcast of some sort of whatever video this afternoon, and they started talking about There, I wasn't watching so much as I was listening to some of it, and they were playing some clips of Biden during the campaign, President Biden during the campaign, talking about how marijuana should be descheduled and people should be released from prison. And then what does he do this week? He advises applicants of government jobs to not invest in the marijuana industry. Don't buy stock because it could be detrimental to their ability to for employment and or I'm assuming security clearances and or any of that kind of stuff. Let me see if I can get a little bit more of a insight on that quick. Eligibility may be negatively impacted. And I guess that's the best way to phrase it. If an individual knowingly or directly invests in stocks or business ventures that specifically pertain to marijuana growers or retailers. This is the federal government working on updating its human resources policies to keep with the development of seemingly unstoppable cannabis industry. Seemingly unstoppable. I mean, at 63 years old, as somebody who was around in 1970 when Nixon, although I wasn't really following, I was only about 12 years old at the time, but a year or two later, I was kind of following. Yeah, so it's definitely something that needs to get moved forward. And like I said, I think it's ridiculous. First off, that he uses marijuana in his campaign to get elected. Matter of fact, I saw a good freaking meme about VP Harris, something about her dressed all in brown and sitting in this brown leather chair to just sort of fade into the background so nobody has to hear from her again. Irritates the irk out of me that both of these legislators, ran a campaign that included its marijuana policy and then kind of turn their back on the policies and the advocacy. Mind you, I've never been a fan of either party. If you look at marijuana prohibition and enforcement and legislation that's gone on since 1970, both sides of the aisle that have been growing the for-profit prison system at exponentially increasing rates year after year. Only in the past year has it sort of dipped a little bit, and that's just because 37 states have already legalized for medical, and where are we at? 10 now for recreational, somewhere in there. And so a lot of these states aren't arresting cannabis consumers anymore. So it's sort of telling how many of those people in prisons have been put in prison or in jail for simple marijuana possession. All right, I'm going to do a real quick check here. I don't see any comments below. Those are the only things I really wanted to touch base on federal policy today. I don't think there's much else to talk about. The Safe Banking Act, as we know, got removed from that defense budget. I will actually check it real quick if anything else has happened. Oh, look, an 8-hour-old story. Yeah, nothing's going on with it at the moment, but here's a little story if you want to kind of catch up on this like later. Perlmutter talking about the Safe Banking Act. Actually, this is what I'm looking for. Most recently, the Safe Banking Act was placed in a large-scale bill focused on manufacturing innovation called the America Competes Act. But in exchange for a Rules Committee shows that I think they actually pulled it back out of there, trying to, in other words. Okay, yeah, that's the last I see is that it was placed in with the America Competes Act. And this is an 8-hour-old story. So, they're still trying to find some avenue to get the Safe Banking Act through. That was really the only other thing that I wanted to talk about federal. All right, let me close up a couple of tabs on my other screen here. I will share this one because this is a news story. Poll: nearly 70% of Americans want Congress to allow cannabis, licensed cannabis businesses access to banking services. So this relates to that story, and this has to do with, again, a poll by the American people that believe that cannabis businesses have safe access to banking. All right. Close up all that federal level stuff here. And we'll talk for a couple of minutes about state legislation. As we know, nothing has gone on since February 10th, the third reading. I want to say that the 9th was the day of our press conference up at the State House, which they had the second reading and the vote for the Compassionate Care Act, Bill S-150. On the 10th was the third reading, at which point it moved over to the House. It is now in the House's 3M committee. And last report I heard from their chairman, I was a week or so ago, was that, excuse me, no motion, movement, or action is going to actually be taken on this until probably sometime in April. I know I'm being cautioned by a number of sources that are saying that the House vote is going to be tighter than the Senate vote. The Senate vote was 28-15. Which is 43. I believe there's 45 active members in the Senate right now. I think there's one vacant seat. There should be 46. What is this? I'm sorry, I have to check an email. Sorry for the distraction. So yes, that bill went into the 3M committee, and we expect to see some action taken on it. Like I say, the vote was 28-15. And now we have 124 House members. So I don't know what the number is on that. I am going to reach out to my Marijuana Policy Project. We had Kevin Caldwell on a couple of months ago, who is the Southeast Regional Manager for MPP. And he was talking to me a little bit about it, and I think he has some specifics on what legislators are for and what legislators are against, and may have some idea on who they are in the House. So I'm going to try and get that list from him this week, see what we can come up with. In the meantime, we do, I believe, have an action alert. I want to go check on that. To contact your House representative. Oh, I fib. I was trying to create one to just go and have it address just the 3M committee. I still have it in draft. And the reason is the way our Action Network system, Action Alerts work, you actually have to live in that district for the email to go out. You can't just randomly email to the committee members through there. I wish I could just say, hey, let all these emails go. But yeah, it goes specifically to their constituents. So I am going to be creating a new action alert that will basically be for all your House representatives, so that when you go and click onto the action alert and you go to contact them to support S-150, it will go to your legislator and inform that you want them to support that bill. So give me some time. Actually, I'm going to make a quick note on that one as well, because I want to get to this action alert together pretty quickly. Um, Otherwise, state marijuana legislation. As I mentioned before, we know there's lots of legislation that's been filed, but none of it's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I do want to bring up, down here, the newest one that I learned about, just introduced in January, House Bill 4610, and that is the hemp odor bill. Basically, a lot of states are starting to pass bills that say the smell of burning hemp flower, smell of hemp flower is not reasonable suspicion to stop and search someone. Again, democratically sponsored bill. I doubt it will go anywhere, especially since we're in the second half of our legislative session. It would have to get through both the Senate and the House before the crossover date. The crossover dates usually, I think, are in April or May. But I'm inspired by it and hoping that as next year's sessions begin, we get this legislation reintroduced and hopefully introduced by a Republican so it can move somewhere. May not happen. Also, I guess this sort of relates to state level is we do have elections. We are in the election cycle. I must admit, I'm a little miffed with marijuana policy project, only because, and I don't know if I'm talking out of school on this, but their focus in South Carolina is strictly medical right now. Although marijuana policy project is very similar to NORML's attitude on wanting decriminalization, wanting full legalization. I feel that in South Carolina at the moment they're pussyfooting around. I understand their reasoning, and I'll tell you what it is. They very much like us. Well, they know that NORML is poorly associated by legislators. You start talking about NORML with legislators and all of a sudden they go, see, I knew you wanted full legalization. You're not just in it for the medical. And I can't deny, we are a civil rights, civil liberties organization. We are looking for full legalization. We are looking for decriminalization. Medical, yeah, it's okay, but mind you, South Carolina, you screwed up this frickin' S-150 so bad, it's really not a good, viable, patient-centric bill. And that's what we want, is a good patient-centric bill. All right, I just brought up another link I want to share with you, because if you want to know our policies on what is a good patient-centric medical bill, I will share the link with it to you. Here is the link for 4 attributes of a patient-centric medical cannabis regulatory program. Now, let me kind of quick go back and read comments here. Another thing, Andrea, I don't know if it's because, it could be because you ran against them. And it could be marijuana policy. I don't know if marijuana policy project has any one or the other with your conversation with your rep, but I'll tell you right now, my rep, Sandy Sen, who many of us know Sandy Sen's name, is a horrible, horrible person and legislator. When we called for our lobby day and press conference, her staff says she's already made a decision on that subject. She's not interested in talking to you about it. So she's not interested in talking to her candidate, her constituents. And and on top of that, if you actually watch the debates and how she tried to accuse Jill Swing of just using her daughter's illness to try and get her own marijuana, Like I say, Sandy Sen is a horrible, horrible human being, in my opinion. Yeah, they'll just, although they're supposed to be your representative, they only represent who they want to represent, which is a very sad state of affairs. They don't necessarily represent the constituency as a whole. I want to real quick read Shane's comment here. That's interesting. I'd like to see that book or something. That sounds very interesting. And you bring up a good point. I'm going to quick run away and go get something else, and I'll be right back. And I do have one question here before I go quick get this other thing. I think your question means how am I feeling about it passing through the House? It's passed out of the Senate S-150, passing out of the House. As we were talking about that just a little bit before you joined us, Andrea, the whispers I hear coming down the alley are that it's going to be a tighter vote than in the Senate. And the Senate was 28-15, so we actually had almost twice as many votes for as against. We have 124 House representatives. We would need a minimum of half of those, so 62, 63, 62 to tie, 63, I guess, to pass. To get close to the ratio that they had, we probably have to get 80-40, something like that. But yeah, we only need the majority. Give me a second, I'll be right back. All right. It's me a big mystery to get a jacket untied from the chair. One of the things I get to do sometimes is spend your donations on stuff. I try not to spend it on useless stuff. Most of the stuff we spend it on is things like brochures and postcards and restocking T-shirts and paying our bills. I mean, most of us paying the bills. It's paying the website, it's paying the Action Network, it's paying our Zoom account, it's paying for the post office box because we need an address. It's paying for stuff. But the one thing I got to buy today is some new stuff, and this is going to be part of our display as we go out and set up our booth again now that things are opening up. And that is, let's see if I can see it, this book, The Human Cost of Marijuana Prohibition. Grab this up here real quick. You heard me talk a number of times, and actually the executive director was on our program at one point last year. See if I can find the right. Cruel Consequences. C-R-U-E-L. Cruel Consequences. And what they do is they try and gather stories throughout the nation of people that have been arrested for marijuana and what the residual consequences for. So kind of talking on the same school that I think it was Shane just mentioned. Yeah, I don't want to say quite often, but damn, more than I like to. I get calls or messages or emails from some young mother who somehow or another got involved with CPS and got tested positive for cannabis. Quite often, these calls are from young moms telling me that I'm just buying that broad spectrum CBD at the CBD shop up on Rivers Avenue or up on somewhere nearby, one of the local CBD shops. But as you and I all know, marijuana P testing doesn't differentiate between THC and other cannabinoids for the most part. And so you can take CBD and still pop on a marijuana test and not get the job, or have your children threaten to have your children take away from you, all these different kind of things. So and that's again why our focus is moving forward going to be on depenalization, decriminalization. If you did watch the video or join us for our press conference back in February, when I was speaking, I told one of the stories that are actually in this book. My guess is it's probably the last one, because I believe it was the last one she collected. And that was, let's see if I can get his name here before I go talking too much. Come on, Nick, where are you, man? There it is. Nick Stimson. Now, I'll kind of show this page real quick. It has Nick's story in here. Nick was a young boy at about 14, got caught with cannabis. Had to go through, I guess, P testing or whatever. At one point, he got given probation and frequent drug testing. And at one point, a couple of years later, when he was like 16, about 2 years later, a year and a half later, he got caught with like 5 grams of cannabis. So he was given. That's when he was given probation and the frequent testing. And so he could find relief. He started finding other options so that he wouldn't get caught with the P testing. And this is, again, something that scares me about when they talk about random testing in our schools. To avoid getting caught with cannabis in his pee, he decided to start huffing different household products. And the one that ended up taking his life was huffing computer keyboard cleaner or something like that. I find some kind of electronic cleaner. And again, huffing this stuff eventually took his life. So that story to me just sort of indicates that prohibition doesn't fix the problem. It, in many a times, will cause people who are looking for relief to find another alternative. If they can't use cannabis as a safe alternative, they'll look for another alternative. And again, I've seen this happen in our schools, or heard of it happening in our schools. There were a couple of South Carolina schools at one point, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but had implemented mandatory drug testing. I believe it was just on their student athletes. But I'm not sure. And then I've seen proposals at other schools to implement random drug testing on students. And again, kids aren't dumb. They know that cannabinoids hang in your system for 30, 40 or longer, depending on how much of a user you are, days. And so what are they doing? They're finding drugs that'll clear their system in 24 to 48 hours, much more highly dangerous drugs. But they're doing it to avoid detection. It's just a dangerous game we're setting our kids up to play, and it really needs to stop. So with that said, I'm going to double check time because I'm rambling now. We are starting to move forward with our process on trying to start decriminalize municipally through the state of South Carolina. We have picked our first target, which is going to be the city of Charleston. A couple of reasons behind why it's the city of Charleston. One, it's the largest city in the state. Two, it's where I live. Three, some of the people that I'm starting to collaborate with also live right here in the community. We're starting to build a coalition locally of hopefully some groups that can help us work on this. We have been joined by the ACLU of South Carolina, and also let me find the name of it so I don't get it wrong. People's Budget Coalition of Charleston, I believe it is. There it is, the People's Budget Coalition. And the People's Budget Coalition, basically their goal is to build a safe and just Charleston through eliminating racist policing, from eliminating racist policing to investing in life-affirming services. So it's not just decrim, they're looking to do a wider, cast a wider net on their particular advocacy. Also, again, I mentioned Cruel Consequences. They're a nonprofit based out of Virginia, and we will be collaborating with them as well, at least through the next few months. And then after, I'm going to say hopefully, after the governor signs this bill, the S-150 bill, we should hopefully then be joined in our efforts by Marijuana Policy Project. But at this point, my understanding is they are completely in the background on decrim at the moment. And again, focusing in the state on just on medical. Ooh, PDF's priceless. Nice. All right, I got a private message here. Okay, you're welcome. I'm not sure what the Scott doesn't like Columbia comment is, but I like Colombian. Poor People Campaign. No, I'll have to look into that. So yes, things are starting to move forward. What we're trying to do right now is formulate how we're going to ask about the stories and what stories we're going to be trying to collect. I want to say we, but kind of I've come to the conclusion that we are going to be telling these stories as anonymous stories. We do not want to be outing people, and we do not want to be people putting our supporters in a position to have to deal with retaliation, retribution, and or discrimination from people just because they decided to tell their story. So we're trying to figure out exactly how it's going to be best to gather the stories in an anonymous manner and share them in that way. We've got a couple of options that we're kind of talking about collection. Some of them might be just kind of one-on-one type of a Zoom conversation. But what we would have you do is turn off your video, and let me see if I can do this to show everybody. Basically, in renaming, just don't give yourself a name at all. Oh, it won't let me do that. I have to put something in there. So we'll probably give you a number then. There we go. So mine now shows a number instead of a name. And of course, mine right now is showing our logo because that's what I had loaded. But most of you, if you would turn off your video and basically change your name to a number, we would have a gray background with a number on it. Works for me. If we can use your voice, that's not as telling. I don't think that would out people as much. I appreciate that, Shane. I'm just not sure how that's going to kind of affect the program, because I mean, I don't mind, you know me, I don't mind having my face attached to the advocacy. Well, I'm still kind of working on that, I must admit. Let me think about that a little more. If somebody doesn't care if they're anonymous or not, I mean, I don't mind. I think it has more impact if we can actually put a face to it. That's my feeling. I feel it has greater impact if we can put a face to it. But again, I also know that a lot of people are afraid to be out, and that there is the chance of, oh, there we are, I like it. We got the numbers going. That we can, I want to tell them as impactfully as we can. And again, the stories we're going to be collecting initially are going to have to be specifically for people that live in the city of Charleston, because that's the city we're targeting first. And although I know a good story will ring true throughout the community, I think because we're trying to address city council with this, that they have to be local to that, whatever town and or city we're hitting first, or at the time. I like reading some of these comments. Thank you. Boy, you just threw a freaking monkey wrench in my thought process on that one, because like I said, I was thinking, talking to a couple people, I know the ACLU wasn't as concerned about anonymity as I was. But when I was talking to Tamara at Cruel Consequences, she's been working 5 years to collect 20 stories that she has, and she's got names attached to her. But she also knows that that's been one of the probably biggest part of her battle, is trying to get the stories that aren't anonymous. I don't know. Now you kind of threw a monkey wrench in that thought process, but I'll nail it in the next week or so, because my goal is to actually make an announcement by early April and have, I'm not going to call it an event per se, because that would require permits and stuff like that. We're going to set up our booth. My plan at this point is to set up our booth down in Marion Square on a Saturday, April 23rd, and kind of just start collecting stories and have our little booth out. And I'll tell you, part of the reason why I'm doing it there is I've been going in an ongoing battle with the city of Charleston and the Parks Department to try and attend their farmers market that goes on in Marion Square every Saturday as a nonprofit. In 2017, we applied and we got a response back saying that if they allowed us to be there, it would look like they supported our cause, and they couldn't do that. And I didn't know who I was dealing with at the time. And I finally realized it was a governmental agency. Governmental agency doesn't have any right to say, no, you can't come here because we disagree with you politically. And so I fired back at them, and now it's all been an administrative issue. First off, COVID, and then we're going through the process of adding on our farm and produce vendors first, and then our craft and art vendors next. And they had their first one this past Saturday of the year, but now they're going, now we need to wait and reevaluate, the program until we can decide to start allowing nonprofits to apply. It happens, night Shane, it happens at a public city park, which is a traditional public forum. So we've decided, screw asking for permission. We won't set up in the little pathways where the farm market is, but we're going to set up right there in the park itself and start our program in April and kind of kick it off downtown Charleston. All right. I see Shane had to go. We are getting real close to 8 o'clock. Before I kind of cut it loose, I do want to ask if anybody does have any questions or comments for tonight. I do apologize for kind of rambling all around, and I do want to reach out to him later. Okay, no other real comments down there. I'm expecting next week. Let me go find this real quick. I had one of our supporters mention to me that they would like to see, okay, where is he now? Messenger. There you go. Sent me contact information for a candidate, Greg Ford, who is a Republican running in the, I want to say, District 98, House Representative District 98. And he claims to know his cannabis, and I believe is I don't know if it's pro-legalization or at least decriminalization. But anyway, I took the suggestion of our supporter and said, why invite him onto the conversation? It could be interesting to listen to. So I did send out an invite, and he responded, and he said he wasn't able to join us this evening, but that probably either the 16th or the 30th, he would be available. And so I will contact him back tomorrow and just sort of see which one, if of those days, might be a preference to him. And we'll have a legislative candidate for House on the phone or on the Zoom telling us his position. I look forward to it because the more politicians on the controlling side of our legislature that support cannabis, the better off we are. All right, that's kind of it for me. Before I go, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add tonight? All right, I am going to call it then, and thank you for joining me. Don't forget, if you want to reach out to me, you can always reach out through our website, scnormal.org. Go to our contact page or email me at normalsouthcarolina@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media, mostly Facebook, but we also occasionally post on Twitter and Instagram. And follow our YouTube channel. In case you miss these meetings, you'll find them over there. Also starting to think some new series of one-on-one Zooms that we're going to be posting just to there and not being live broadcasts. Oh, and if you are on our website, scroll all the way down to the bottom. Don't forget to check the link to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Might start getting a few more reminders in there as well. That's it for me tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate y'all. And I look forward to seeing you here again next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Thanks for being here.